I'll be honest, I just can't see myself living in the West for much longer. Assalamu alaikum. So today I want to talk about making hijrah, especially as a revert. So why would you want to make hijrah? Obviously, to migrate back to Muslim land. I don't know what the scholarly opinion actually is on this. I know that it's encouraged, heavily encouraged, but I'll just say from my perspective, I think that in the West, especially in the UK, I'm sure it's the same or even worse in America, Canada especially. In London, in the UK, there are issues in terms of LGTB, issues in terms of the government having more control over your kids than you would want them to. All of these types of things. There's a lot of gangs, a lot of violence, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, a lot of haram stuff that you don't want your kids involved in. And I'll be honest, if they grow up in the West, it's almost inevitable that they will encounter these things and likely be involved to some extent. Even the most practicing Muslims have had run-ins with this kind of thing. And so I have to ask myself, is this what I want for my children? Is this what I want for my family? Is this what I want for my wife, for myself, for our deen, our Islam? And it didn't take me long to realize that no, this is not what I want for my family. And although it's difficult for me, I have family here. Everyone who I know is here. I don't know basically anyone in a Muslim country. So if I make that move, inshallah, it'll be very difficult. And so I really have to consider certain things before I actually do it. And I also have to consider which country is the best for me and for my family. For those of you who don't know, I am married. I don't have children yet, but inshallah, in the near future, inshallah. I think that moving away as a revert is very difficult because your family don't really understand that move as well. They're not going to understand, because of Islam. All they're going to hear is Islam is taking you away from me. And I understand that to a degree. I think that's a very normal human response. Maybe slightly selfish, but I think it's a very normal response because I put myself in that position. One day I will have children, inshallah. And if they went against my beliefs and they went and lived a life that I didn't approve of necessarily, I would feel sad. I would feel like they've let me down, but I've also let them down. So I can definitely see it from their perspective. I think the move is a little bit easier for born and raised Muslims. Not to say that it's easy at all, because it's definitely not. If you've lived in the West for a long time, if you were born here, then you will likely be used to certain things, right? A certain way of life. And I have born, raised Muslim friends who have zero intention of moving to a Muslim land and making hijrah. I have mixed feelings on that, but I speak to them about it, but I have mixed feelings. So aside from family, what other things could be an issue? I think certain things such as accessibility to maybe like healthcare, accessibility to good education, secular education, if that's something that you want for your children. I think to a degree we all should have some type of secular education. Access to fast services, maybe even fast internet, fast Amazon. Some countries, Amazon doesn't really work that well. But then all of these services you don't need, right? You can just go and get your food from a local shop. You can get it might even prevent you from buying stuff that you don't even need. So there's pros and cons. I think something else that could be an issue is language. Depending on the country, obviously, certain countries actually speak English to an extent. Other countries do not. So it requires you to learn about how to speak that language. Culture as well might be a massive culture shock. But anyway, all of these can be issues, but they can also be great experiences. Things that make you have a different perspective on life, on being more grateful, I would say, is likely the experience. You may hate it at first, you may struggle to assimilate to that culture, to that language, to that environment, but over the long term, it will likely make you a better person. And I think as Muslims, we need to choose Islam over this dunya. I think largely someone would choose to move to non-Muslim land or choose to stay in non-Muslim land because they are somewhat to a degree choosing this dunya, whether that's for wealth, for opportunities, for less worries, less stress, all of these things. But you are also giving up your Islam a little bit. I'm just being honest, you are, because you are also accepting that you'll be surrounded by mainly non-Muslims. Your children will be surrounded by haram influences. And that's not to say that these aren't in Muslim countries, but of course it's to a lesser extent. And of course, if you choose the right place, then you have a lot more control over these things. But anyway, enough of that serious talk. I want to talk about which places I am open to moving to. So number one, it has to be UAE. And I'm not saying that I'm set on this, and I'm not saying I'll ever move here, but that is always one of the first places that you would think of when you're thinking about making hijrah. Obviously there are other places as well, but UAE stands out because I'm from London, and places in UAE are just like London but a little bit less haram, from what I hear. And because of that, it'll be easier, or it'll be fairly easy to assimilate. They speak English everywhere. I believe they speak English everywhere, especially in the major parts of UAE, and it's quite easy to move to. You can move there through a business. You can get a freelance visa where I believe it allows you to stay 2 years, and you can renew that, and it's fairly low startup costs as well. So yeah, but then there's negatives as well. It's probably one of the most haram Muslim countries in terms of, once you let a lot of non-Muslims in, typically a lot of the Sharia, you just start to see a lot more sort of liberal stuff, a lot more, maybe even not drunks. Well, yeah, drunks too, but drugs, alcohol, these kinds of things, right? More secular ideas, more liberal ideas, less hayat. And on top of this, UAE is almost impossible to get citizenship. So it's not like you can even plan for the future. We are definitely going to be here in 10 years time, 20 years time. You will have to keep applying for a visa, and you never know if you're going to get it. So it's very hard to put your roots down. And on top of that, for me, it's very far. It's far from home. I plan to visit home at least once every 2 months or so, inshallah. And that's going to be very expensive. So that's also something that I have to keep into consideration. And then on top of that, out of most Muslim countries, this is one of the pricier options. And for somebody who's not earning, tens of thousands a month, is it affordable? Maybe not right now. Maybe this is a step for the future. Who knows? So then I come to option 2, Saudi. So obviously the obvious reasons, this is the birthplace of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I think the idea of being able to, Umrah once a year would be amazing. Visiting Medina as well, that would be amazing. All of these things, and also, everything is halal. Same with UAE, everything is halal as well. For the most part, women have hayat, they cover up. And this is great. I don't know where Saudi is going, because now they've allowed, I believe pubs to be made for non-Muslims. I think once you let just that little bit of liberalism infest your society, I think it spreads like wildfire. So I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I think this is one of the best options, to be honest. You have the options of, studying Islam there as well. Yeah, there's so many good things, and it's a great option for the future. If you're able to get residency, that's the only thing. It might be hard to get residency, and it might be hard to enter without having a full-time job there or a business. From what I've heard, it's not as easily accessible as UAE. And then once again, it's far from home. I believe English is spoken there quite a bit, but you may have to also learn Arabic, which should be an objective of Muslims anyway. So that comes on to option number 3, which is a country which I love. I love the food. I think the people are great for the most part. I like how the mosques, there are so many, so many mosques in Turkey. I've been to Turkey. I went twice last year, actually. I've been there multiple times, and I really enjoyed my time there. Everything about it is great, other than the fact that it's turning more and more into a secular liberal country. And I think to a degree, this is going to impact every single Muslim country, to a degree. Now, it's quite cost ineffective. If you live right in the center of Istanbul, it's going to cost you more, but outside of that, it's probably very, very cheap. I haven't actually looked it up, but I assume it's very, very cheap. As you can tell, I haven't done massive amounts of research. It's just kind of off the top of my head and what I've heard from other people. I love the food, although Turkish food in Turkey isn't as good as Turkish food in the UK for some weird reason. Now, the language will be an issue. Turkish people don't really speak English. That was a massive shock. I thought, they're kind of part of Europe to a degree. Surely they speak English. Try and navigate around Istanbul or Turkey with just English. It's going to be very, very difficult for you. So you may have to learn some Turkish as well. If you're trying to learn Turkish and also Arabic as well, it's going to be a lot. There's going to be some conflict there. And then after that, I don't know how to get in. I don't know the entry requirements. It's probably easier than Saudi. You may have to get a job. You may have to have a decent business in terms of revenue and stuff like that. I don't know how easy it is for freelancers. Maybe it's quite easy. If you have any information about any of these, put it in the comments below, because I'd actually be interested in hearing. And that brings us on to the 4th option, which is Morocco. So my wife is Moroccan. So this is an obvious choice for us, and maybe we're leaning towards this. Maybe it's, almost certain. Inshallah, we'll see. But yeah, there's no entry requirements for us. All we have to do is register our marriage at the embassy. That's basically it. Then I apply for residency, and it's pretty straightforward. With Morocco, it's the closest Muslim country to the UK, I believe. I think. Anyway, it's only like a 3-hour flight, so it's not very far at all. And so this seems like an obvious option. There is still a strong sense of Islam there, especially in certain parts. You know, the more you move out of the capital city or out of big cities, the more Islam there is. I think Morocco gets a bad rap. I think they get that whole liberal LGTV. Some Muslim guys go there to sleep with prostitutes and stuff like that. So it gets a bad rap, but I think there's only certain parts are like that. Majority of the country, from what I hear, is very religious, very practicing. I think it would be a great place in terms of visiting back home as well. And the fact there's no entry requirements really for us. Obviously, the negatives are that I'd have to learn the language. They don't really speak that much English there, so I'd have to learn Arabic to an extent, Moroccan Arabic. I don't speak French either. They speak French there, Amazigh or whatever. I don't know the actual name of it, but they speak that there too. That is also kind of a barrier. What's great about it is that the rent and the cost of living is extremely cheap, probably the cheapest on the list. You can actually get a place for like £250 a month. Sounds ideal if you're just sort of testing the waters in an Islamic country. But anyway, there's a couple of other options I had in mind, like Oman. I know there's a YouTuber who makes videos about making hijrah to Oman. Mustafa, I was trying to remember his name, Mustafa. I actually reached out to him on Instagram. Lovely guy, mashallah. And yeah, he's helping guys move their families or move themselves to Oman. You know, Allah Mubarak, that's amazing. Sounds amazing. I need to do some more research into it, I think. Once again, it's very far away. All of these sort of Middle Eastern countries and Arab countries are very far away for the most part. So you really have to research first before you actually go and make that move. But anyway, that's the end of this video. I want to talk more about this topic later on. I want to actually research a bit more and come back to you and have discussions with you as well. Yeah, let me know if you have any recommendations, any advice that you want to give me, inshallah. And yeah, I'll see you shortly, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.